He's crazy like Jack Bauer. His name is Forrest Power. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, YouTube. It isn't easy to get up and run at 6 a.m. when you're wearing silk pyjamas. This nugget of wisdom came from none other than the legendary Marvin Hagler during the 1980s, and it's never been more apt for Ireland's most famous son, Conor McGregor, than right now. Having watched his almost meteoric rise to fame in the UFC, I always felt that he somewhat overachieved. Yes, he was a talented kickboxer with some unnerving front kicks designed to keep opponents guessing, but he never really faced an elite grappler until he came up against Chad Mendes, who was actually fighting on 10 days' notice. And in that fight, Mendes did pretty well until, inevitably, in the first round, he ended up gassing out. Off the back of that, Conor McGregor went on to KO Jose Aldo in 13 seconds, and a literal legend was born. If you'd rubbed a magic lamp, you couldn't have written a better story for Conor McGregor's entry into the UFC. Then came the epic battles with Nate Diaz, someone that, to my mind, was pretty much a lightweight gatekeeper for years. And they exchanged wins and losses. Nate Diaz eventually became a household name, cashed in on a bit of the fame that he gained by fighting McGregor, and became one of the most recognisable figures in the sport. But I would argue that Nate Diaz has never been a top 3 fighter in any of the weight classes that he's actually competed in. Maybe not even top 5, due to the fact that I think he's got some pretty extreme wrestling deficiencies and a lack of KO power in his punches. I'll give him his credit. He's great at BJJ, and he's got cardio just like his brother has that goes through the roof. But for me, these things don't mask his deficiencies. Still though, the McGregor hype train rumbled on, and yet again the stars seemed to align for the Irishman, and he ended up taking on Eddie Alvarez for a chance to become the double champ, as he decreed to the watching public. That is, the lightweight UFC champion, on top of being the resident featherweight kingpin too. And here we witness Conor McGregor at his destructive best, as he produced a career best performance, and I will give him a lot of credit for that. But once more, you've got to ask yourself, is Eddie Alvarez an elite fighter? Yes, he tasted gold, but his record before and after the McGregor fight was pretty much erratic at best. And so I do feel like McGregor got a little bit lucky with regards to the quality of champion he fought when he actually won that lightweight title. But now, with his Hall of Fame status cemented by becoming the first double champ in UFC history, McGregor sat on top of the sport. Enter Khabib Nurmagomedov, a snarling Russian sambo fighter that had barely lost a round in MMA, and the guy that all the OG fans were dubbing as the true monster of the division. I remember trawling through some of the more prominent MMA forums on the internet during this time period, and the posters that knew what they were talking about were all chanting Khabib time, because they knew that eventually, when Khabib got his hands on McGregor, there was only going to be one outcome. Quite a lot of my friends who are casual MMA fans around this time period as well were telling me that Conor McGregor was the best thing since sliced bread. And I remember the day when Khabib actually eventually fought Conor, I won quite a lot of money through betting on that fight, but most importantly, I had that smug sense of satisfaction plastered across my face when I spoke to some of those aforementioned McGregor fans after the fight. Let's face it, Khabib mauled Conor. He actually mauled him like a burr. The fight was burly competitive, and since then, Conor has dodged all notion of a proper fight until the most recent bout with Dustin Poirier. I mean, if you look at those boxing matches like he had with Floyd Mayweather and the Donald Cerrone fight that he had to his comeback to the UFC, they're all good and well from a financial point of view, but this is a guy that many unjustifiably, in my eyes, heralded as the best ever to put on a pair of gloves in a UFC octagon. With his behaviour in the media becoming increasingly stranger with every day, I think that McGregor is in danger of being exposed as yesterday's man. Punch-ups with pensioners in Ireland made global press headlines. More reports of him drunkenly smashing a fan's phone in a rage, and a long line of bitter Twitter comments that have become more of a cornerstone of his personality than actually his trademark left hand that made him famous in the first place. Most recently, though, he's made headlines on a global scale for an attempted punch-up with Machine Gun Kelly at a recent awards ceremony with Megan Fox and the rest of the world watching on. And if you've not already kind of gathered it by now, guys, there's a pretty tragic undertone to this entire story and this entire ordeal, and I think it's likely to have an unhappy ending for the Irishman. Over the last decade, he has become the most recognisable fighter in the world, but with that label comes an ego that is likely bigger than Ireland itself. The same hunger and desire that brought an Irishman from living off welfare handouts just isn't there anymore. And I know that might sound like a criticism, but it's really not. The type of money that Conor McGregor has earned over the past decade would change everyone in some way. But this story becomes particularly tragic when you see someone continually seeking out drama in a bid to remain relevant. Fighters love being in the limelight, and it seems with Conor's diminishing skills, and I think that I can say that with some level of confidence, he's determined to stay in the limelight however possible. It seems to me that McGregor's chances of knocking out one of the top lightweights in the UFC and reclaiming the gold belt are fading with each passing day. The guy just doesn't have the same amount of hunger, but how can you with so many zeros lining your bank account? Now, all of this might sound like an incredibly negative video on Conor McGregor, but if I'm truthful with you, I really do worry for his mental health, even if I don't like some of the antics that he's kind of gone through with over the last couple of months and years. And let's face it, he has done some pretty awful things over the last few years. The worst, arguably, in my mind, was taunting Khabib Nurmagomedov about his dead father. He got on Twitter, presumably after he'd necked a full bottle of proper 12 Irish whiskey, and threw some horrible comments in the direction of Khabib's dad. But my experience as a teacher has also led me to think about things on a deeply psychological level. And anytime I see like an instance of bad behaviour in the classroom, I always think about the root of that behaviour, where it's actually come from. And you've got to understand that in Conor McGregor's case, all of this kind of venom and these hateful things that he say online come from a place of pure frustration. Conor McGregor is clearly frustrated that he can't raise a title belt aloft anymore, and so his outlet for that is this kind of childish behaviour that's more befitting of a nursery creche than a red carpet. It's a real shame that the guy hasn't got good enough friends around him that are brave enough to tell him that he needs to have a rethink about some of the things that he says and the way that he acts. That's what true friends should be doing for you. Sitting you down and telling you, listen, the way you're behaving at the minute is embarrassing. But of course, with Conor McGregor's riches, a lot of people are too scared to tell him that. His fall from grace over the last couple of years can't be good for his mental health, and I've been genuinely pleased to see pictures of his wife giving birth to a couple of young kids over this time period, because I hope that now becomes his reason to live. The world does not need a washed up Conor McGregor desperately trying to cling on to something that I don't think he can be anymore. But his kids and his wife likely need him to be the dad that he could be, that he should be. And so that kind of brings us back full circle, guys. Marvin Hagler might have said it's hard to run at 6 a.m. when you're wearing silk pyjamas, but Conor, you don't need to run anymore. So keep the nightwear on and leave the fighting to the guys that really want it today, the people that are up and comers, the people that deserve a chance at UFC glory. But what do you guys think about this topic? Is Conor McGregor done? Is he heading for some kind of mental health breakdown? I kind of feel like it's inevitable at some point that will happen if he continues in the same manner that he's going now. Let me know in the comment section what you think, guys, because this is a topic that I think is going to become more prevalent if he continues to fight and lose at that top level. So do let me know in the comment section what you think about Conor McGregor and what his future holds. If you have made it this far, thank you very much, first of all. Drop me a like, as this does help me out immensely. I've been playing around with the colour settings and also my mic settings to hopefully improve my videos over the last kind of week or so. And I've also invested in a webcam that I might use as well. I'm actually thinking about getting into the streaming scene, but that idea is at its embryonic stage at the minute. But yeah, as always, guys, thank you very much for watching this video, as it does mean the world to me. I'm Forrest Power, and this has been Emotional.